Okay.
So I'll tell you. All right. Looks like we're live. So welcome, Maha. It's a pleasure to have you here today on this conversation, Tech Talks organized by ValidVent. It's great to finally get to the chance to speak with you as the head of regulatory affairs at the Qatar Financial Authority. And today we'll just deep dive a little bit more into Qatar, which has been a little bit on the slower side when it comes to crypto regulation. So while the European Union is racing ahead, really, implementing its crypto rules, and the UK is also taking big strides forward. The US might be struggling a little bit
Oh, yeah.
to get its crypto regulation off the ground, and the industry has been vocal about how that's troubling for them. But still, the US remains a major economic power when it comes to globally, but also for crypto. And then in Asia, there's so many different hotspots. Even Hong Kong is set to approve Bitcoin ETFs soon after such a hype from US regulators approving Bitcoin spot ETFs. So as I mentioned, Qatar is a little bit more on the cautious side, and I'd love to hear more from you about how it's been in the past and where that's going to develop. So maybe you can first of all just introduce yourself a little bit and the work that you do.
Definitely. So, thank you so much for hosting me, and thank you so much for taking the time to give me the opportunity to also talk about Qatar. So I'm Maha Sadi. I am head of regulatory affairs at Qatar Financial Center Authority, but I'll be covering this talk on a personal capacity. The views that I'll be expressing are my own, are not that of my employer. When it comes to Qatar, as you rightly mentioned, was on the cautious side. So back in uh, 2018, 2019, Qatar Central Bank issued a circular that bans the deal with cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin. The reason behind that is that they thought that it's necessary from an investment protection point of view because it's highly speculative in nature. Some other interpretations were of the opinion that it could be also non-Sharia compliant because it's purely speculative. There is no real asset behind it. As time has gone by, last year, Qatar Financial Center, in cooperation with Qatar Central Bank, worked on the digital asset framework. The digital asset framework, still in its current draft, looks at cryptocurrencies as prohibited tokens, but would only make space for real world asset tokenizations, primarily looking into use cases that are linked to real world assets or investment tokens. In parallel to the digital asset framework, what Qatar has also implemented and QFC is being responsible for is the digital asset lab. The digital asset lab is our sandbox environment where we'll be looking into different use cases. Currently, we're examining three prime use cases, being real estate tokenization, carbon credits, and what I think is super unique and has not been given a lot of attention in other jurisdictions is sukuk issuance, Islamic bonds. We have closed the public consultation in January. We received a very reasonable amount of comments, and we're currently working on the comments that were received to see how we can tweak the digital asset framework to reflect our market needs.
Right. So thanks for that, overview right now. So first of all, maybe let's start and deep dive into the crypto ban. Since
Yes.
2018, Qatar has banned crypto trading specifically. So does that mean that retail users can't access crypto at all, or what does that mean exactly?
So technically, we all know that you cannot really ban the trading of cryptocurrencies because anyone can do it on peer-to-peer basis or through centralized exchanges. However, the ban could come into effect the moment that you want to convert your cryptocurrencies into fiat. The banking system will block that, and there will be penalties involved. So basically, as long as it's just crypto to crypto on peer-to-peer basis, I don't think that this is something that is banned or can be banned realistically. But specifically, the moment that it hits the banking sector or the converting from crypto to fiat, this is something that the central bank and the regulators can block.
And that's still ongoing since 2018 till today.
Correct.
And with all of these regulatory frameworks that are slowly being developed under the authority, is this something that you think is going to change in the future?
I hope so, and I think so.
But
Because
that's not what the
I
frameworks
mean,
are targeting at the moment, right?
there is a thin line. I'm speculating here again. We're looking. There has been a couple of interests in looking into ETFs. ETFs, because this is also something that the SEC is approving, is just getting a bit of an exposure to, I don't know, Bitcoin as an underlying asset. And technically, we're looking into the way of this is if this is really a normal traditional security, or is it something that has to be banned because the underlying could have any sorts of crypto elements. So I think realistically and frankly, the ban cannot go on forever. But within Qatar, we're working really well on establishing our regulatory framework, expertise, looking into lessons learned from other jurisdictions. And once we're comfortable that we have the right investor protection mechanisms in place, and that we will be able to also deal with the situation, I think it's a matter of time to gradually accept it. But I don't think it will happen overnight.
I see. And do you think this has really hindered any potential development in Qatar when it comes to digital assets and the whole crypto industry?
Not quite. I mean, I don't think so. I think that within Qatar, when we're looking into real world asset tokenizations and real use cases, this will make people a bit familiar with the technology and seeing not everything blockchain related or crypto related is bad. And we're looking into a lot of raising awareness, looking into other jurisdictions, looking into how it's done. And I don't want to sound a bit like unrealistic or out of touch with reality. Qatar is looking, it could be looked as an alternative asset class, but given Qatar's wealth in terms of oil and gas resources, the people are really overbanked and they have good access to financial services and it's very inclusive. I don't think that digital assets and crypto trading has had that much of an impact on its economy. But I think it should be something that will be looked into from registration perspective or from ensuring that we will be passive compliance in the future. But in terms of economic downturn, I don't think so.
Right. I guess this would be more of a future looking. I don't think, and the crypto economy is still quite small, so it wouldn't be a big piece of the global pie. But it might be interesting to think, maybe it's too early in the conversation to bring this up, but with oil and gas being a resource that may become less and less
Correct.
relevant in the GDP, do you think that looking at alternative ways to boost the economy is something
I
that
think
Qatar is looking into?
absolutely. And this is reflected in Qatar 2030 vision, Qatar third financial sector strategy, and the Qatar second fintech strategy. We are looking to diversify away from oil and gas and being more sustainable and looking for other sources of income. But I think the benefit of digital assets could be in not necessarily in crypto, but it could be in the use of blockchain as a digitalization mechanism and evolving technology and digitalization, maybe banking, digital banking, etc. But I think slowly we will be looking into it. I think what could be a more of a low hanging fruit, where a lot of people in the crypto community can disagree and have certain strong feelings for or against, is CBDC. I think we might have CBDC prior to having certain cryptocurrencies approved for trading. And it would also make sense because this is something that is also very much can be controlled by the regulators, can be looked into in terms of use cases. And yeah, so I will believe that we might have a CBDC acceptance prior to that. But again, this is just me taking a finger up in the air and seeing where things will go.
Would you have any timeline in mind on when you think there would be a Qatar Central Bank CBDC?
I don't have a timeline, but I don't think that given that the majority of the CBDC projects around the world are already in proof of concept stages, I think the last figure I saw was 95% of all central banks are looking into CBDC projects. I would say it should be the very, very near future.
And so there's a lot of interesting things that you mentioned, so I'm going to have to go back and ask you one by one. First of all, ETFs, such a hot topic for the crypto industry worldwide, especially since the beginning of this year. You mentioned that this is something that the Qatar government is interested in.
I think this comes from some industry demand. So we've looked into big players, big institutional players getting into the ETF game, and some of the interest that we're catching up is ETFs allowed. So this is something that not necessarily the Qatar government is looking into, but it's some of the inquiries that we're getting from the market. And I think this could be a safe approach because with ETFs, you could also qualify your investors, look into the way that it's traded, look into going through regulated entities. So it's also me trying to predict how things will go gradually based on the US approach. Yes, the US has not been the most friendly in crypto wise, but when you have BlackRock and big institutions going for ETFs, this could drive institutional demand and could also get something tangible from a retail perspective, slowly but surely.
Right. So it's kind of an interesting situation then in Qatar because on one hand you cannot trade crypto to fiat, but maybe you will be able to trade ETFs for
I would
crypto,
assume that
like Bitcoin ETFs,
it's.
I mean.
I think this is a subject of the outcome of the assessment of our digital asset framework consultation. It could be something that I would expect would be permissible. It's just again looking into the current inputs and outputs of what is happening. I think ETFs could be um, a gradual step to it. Also looking into how other countries are doing it. Previously, when I used to work in Germany, when we also did not have a lot of regulatory clarity prior to MiCA, ETFs and ETNs were the first thing that Deutsche Börse started to offer to some of the participants in the market. Because it's tried and tested, because it could be a safe alternative, because it's a wrapper. I believe that this could be something that might evolve and be offered in Qatar, but it is not official yet. It's just a speculation.
Always good to note that. Um, and when it comes to maybe you can talk a little bit more about this consultation. What exactly was it for, and what kind of responses have you been receiving?
So when Qatar Financial Center and the QCB looked into the digital asset framework, the digital asset framework had several elements. Some of it was adapting current regulations for the digital asset framework, be it AML, investor protection, company registration. But the biggest chunk was looking into tokenization. And it's people who are in Europe are very familiar with the Liechtenstein container model. That was to a certain extent the model that we decided to go for because it has the property and the ownership rights attached to it. And in that, the prime focus was around investment tokens. And I don't know what else I could tell you about it. It is pretty much straightforward, risk-based approach, and leave some room for interpretation where we're not restricting the use of technology that is to be used. We're not restricting use cases, and it will also have certain token service provider rules that will be either subject to licensing or authorization, where we have to decide if what they're conducting is regulated or non-regulated activities. Yeah, so I think this could provide a very high level overview of what we're trying to do.
So tokenization is, it's been a big year for tokenization as well as a big year for Bitcoin ETFs, as we mentioned. So do you think that the tokenization technology is something that Qatar is interested in developing further when it comes to tokenizing financial instruments, for example?
Yes, I think tokenization is something that the government is interested in. It's something that it will be supporting, and it's something that we're already trying to incorporate within our digital asset lab. So tokenization, in addition to anything that will be related to fintech, insurtech, financial inclusion, financial literacy, in addition to tokenization, is something that is part of the what I mentioned previously, the third financial sector strategy and the fintech strategy that we have. And I believe that by more and more, we will be seeing more investments, we'll be seeing more use cases, and we'll be seeing some major players coming into the market and offering tokenization use cases.
And then Qatar, what kind of do you think that progressing on the tokenization agenda, this would bring in new players from foreign investors or
I believe so, yes. I believe it will be a mixture of big players setting up shop in Doha. And we're also very, very startup fintech friendly. So what Qatar is also doing is providing some incentives to startups and fintech that are looking to scale. We have a very straightforward registration process. We sometimes offer them free working space, uh, and we could, depending on how good the business case is, in certain cases, even waive application fees. So I think that this is going to be a very interesting mixture from very established, well-known, renowned institutions that are trying to scale up their infrastructure in Qatar, and we'll be seeing a lot of interesting use cases, not only from Qatar but also from other all over the world entities that would like to set up in Qatar. An example of that was during the Web Summit. During the Web Summit, Qatar Financial Center registered over 100 companies in 3 days. And a lot of them came from all over the world because they saw that there is a potential in fintechs, but also among them were a lot of blockchain infrastructure providers, technology providers, and those who are looking into tokenization projects.
right? And so that's so in just one day, 100 companies were signed up?
3 days. We've got
3 days.
the Web Summit, yes. And I think that that shows the amount of interest in our ecosystem because in Qatar we've got excellent infrastructure, technology-wise, access to banking system, we have access to talent, and we do provide incentives for businesses that would be seen as something that could provide something to the economy. So yeah, within the Web Summit, we registered over 100 companies.
And are these local companies or foreign companies?
It's a mixture of both, but mainly foreign.
Okay, and maybe, this leads to the question, maybe to look at the Middle East a bit more broadly. So, for example, Dubai and the UAE have been quite, proactive on establishing themselves in the global crypto space, setting up the first regulator, which is, very much just focused on crypto assets and mining, VARA, or the Virtual Assets Regulatory
Yes.
Authority in Dubai. Abu Dhabi also, driving Bitcoin mining, I believe, in the region. And on the other hand, there's Saudi Arabia, which I don't know very much about their regulatory frameworks and what they've been up to. I think perhaps they've also had a bit more of a slow and reserved approach to cryptocurrencies. Yeah, if you could give a little bit of a high-level overview of that.
I think you have provided a very good overview. So, looking at Saudi Arabia, I think Saudi Arabia had invested a lot in NFTs and into gamification, into metaverse, and they had already started discussions around CBDC when SAMA, the Central Bank of Saudi, and worked with the Central Bank of the United Emirates and discussed Project Abid, a CBDC project. I think it was back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, on the top of my head. So Saudi Arabia has looked into use cases, looked into Web3 applications and blockchain applications in general, but I have not seen anything in terms of regulation when it comes directly to cryptocurrencies. Blockchain, CBDC, Web3, Metaverse, yes, and NFTs. The UAE has been very crypto friendly. You rightly mentioned VARA. There's also other there are free zones like ADGM and Dubai Financial Center. They have different ways to license and authorize crypto asset service providers or VAS. Then you have Oman. I think Oman had recently had a restructure in their financial services, and they're also announcing some sort of a new financial services authority. I believe that cryptocurrencies trading and mining there is no regulated framework around it, but based on the research that I saw, that it's not illegal either. I think Bahrain has an interesting approach towards digital assets, and I believe I think Binance also had some operations in Bahrain. Sorry. You have Qatar, where we mentioned that there's a cryptocurrency ban. Looking into other Arabic countries, Egypt also bans cryptocurrencies. But interestingly, in other Arab countries that are not GCC based, like Lebanon, you would see that cryptocurrency, specifically stable coins, was a lifeline for a lot of the individuals that did not manage to get into their deposits when the central bank just had an issue. So it's very diverse across the GCC and across the Middle East. I'm hoping that with the passage of time that we would have something similar to the EU, where we'll be having a more harmonized approach. Because as we all know, crypto is borderless, and from a consumer protection AML perspective, and from making sure that things are going to have a better impact for the economy, for the individuals, and also provide a proper regulatory approach. I'm hoping that we could come up with a similar approach like we did in Europe and harmonize our efforts in dealing with digital assets and cryptocurrencies.
I see. And maybe, just to kind of stick to Dubai versus Qatar, because Dubai is the most maybe prominent when it comes to crypto in the region. If Qatar's, progress on a regulatory framework for tokenization and CBDCs and blockchain-based assets moves forward, what kind of players would be attracted to come to Qatar instead of Dubai, perhaps? Or where would that distinction lie?
Oh, that's a spicy question. I think what Qatar would be looking for is infrastructure providers. So I think it's public information. We have infrastructure providers like R3 Corda, for example. We would be looking into real world asset tokenization use cases. Trying to think on the top of my head, we will be focusing more on institutional players, institutional grade players, and looking into ways that we can integrate tokenization into day-to-day work, not necessarily only financial. This is a very important topic that maybe I did not mention, because within Qatar Financial Center, we also license other providers that are not providing financial services. Like if you would use blockchain technology for, I don't know, education, healthcare, etc. These are things that we could also attract in Doha within our attractive onshore regulation that is based on English common law. Dubai might be, Dubai is more cryptocurrency friendly, DAO friendly, but, and it's not meant as a criticism in no means, but there are way too many players. There are way too many players registering in ADGM, in Dubai Financial Center, in VARA, that I kind of lost track who's doing what. And I don't know if all of them are really contributing to the crypto ecosystem or not. I believe that there might be a consolidation and some entities will deregister because there are way too many. So I believe, like, to summarize, Qatar will be looking at it from an infrastructure, institutional grade, financial, non-financial use cases. Dubai is much more into crypto assets, Web3, NFTs, DAOs, and might have a bigger risk appetite than we do.
Right. So maybe Qatar is kind of the older brother looking for the kind of the bigger institutional players, while Dubai is maybe more attractive to the, more experimental startups in the Web3 sector.
I would say so. Yeah.
And so just if I understood correctly, right now there wouldn't be any licensed institutions handling tokenization and these kinds of infrastructures yet, because the regulatory framework is not there yet. Is that correct? Or is this already happening?
This is the proposed regulation does include a licensing and authorization criteria. It is not in effect yet, but we're hoping to close it by this year.
By
And
this
there
year?
are also,
Do you know
yeah,
when?
Um, I'm hoping Q3, the latest Q4, like more towards the end of the year. But if there is a case that does not require regulated activities in financial services, like healthcare, like providing consultancy services, like I don't know, generic blockchain applications, we don't necessarily, we could look into it from a fintech perspective because we do have a DLT criteria within our fintech permitted activities. But for regulated financial activities, I think we're going to have to wait until the digital asset framework passes.
And this is the framework which is right now in consultation
The
period, or
consultation
is
closed. The
right?
consultation closed in January already, and we received a good amount of comments. We were surprised that some comments also came from abroad, from Brussels, from the UK, etc. So we did not expect that amount of responses because usually we consult and we get very limited responses. But for the digital asset framework, we were positively surprised by the feedback that was received and the interest. Yeah, so we went through the responses of the consultation,
And how
and
many
we
responses were there,
um
if you remember?
I think 15, which is not a lot. I know it's not a lot compared to the EU, but for us it still was a big deal. But some of them are very, very big institutions.
Yes, interesting. And so, okay, so that's interesting. So now this goes through the legislative process, and what's that like in Qatar?
So I have to admit that I'm relatively new to this since I just started in November. But what happened is that we went through the comments one by one and we looked into the comments that we want to integrate, and we're going to be providing responses to those who already contributed to consultation and look into what would be integrated now or in a second phase. We have written a report to our board, so Qatar Central Bank, QFCRA and QFCA, and we would see what parts would be taken into consideration during a board decision, and then through the board decision, we will decide what would happen next. So there is a bit of an internal process by which we'll be valuing and evaluating the proposed amount of work that will have to go into adding and amending the current framework based on the responses. Once the board approves it, then we will take it from there.
So, okay. A lot of work to do before the end of the year, and
Yes.
hopefully by the time that this will pass. Um, and let's see, is there anything maybe that I didn't ask that you can share about Qatar? I mean, oh, actually, there is something else because over the past few months, there's been a lot of speculation about the Qatar Investment Authority making a 500 billion investment in Bitcoin. And this was also kind of spread around on Twitter, on X, from accounts like Anthony Scaramucci and Max Kaiser, which are big, Bitcoin maximalists and investors in the space. So I was wondering if that's something you've heard of, or if Qatar's investment strategy includes crypto or Bitcoin in any way.
Honest answer, I don't know. I read the same press releases that you were mentioning, and speculating, trying to put one on one, I'm assuming it has to do with mining activities, but I cannot confirm. Like, I think it might be related directly to mining activities, but I really do not have a valid source that I can cite or I can provide you with right now with no doubt. But yeah.
Well, yeah, so that was an interesting, rumors going around, which for now have not been resolved, to my knowledge at least. And so I guess if you look at Qatar over the next 5 or 10 years when it comes to crypto and tokenization, what kind of future do you see in your crystal ball?
Um, I think that we might be leading the way when it comes to Sukuk issuance tokenization, because I don't think any other jurisdiction looked into it and provided. So it could be unique. I think
Which
that
which parts? Could you repeat that?
It's sukuk
Sukuk.
issuance. These are Islamic bonds, the issuance of
Okay.
tokenized Islamic bonds, because that's part of our digital asset lab use cases that we're trying to promote. So far, I haven't seen other jurisdictions looking into tokenizing Islamic bonds. So I think
Could you
this could
describe
set us
those a
apart.
little bit? Could you
Yes.
describe Islamic bonds a bit more?
So basically, in Islamic finance, we have a prohibition of interest. We have a way by which your investment can have different forms, and Islamic bonds are interest free, but it will have a risk reward sharing element into it. It could also be investing in real world assets as an underlying, because in Islamic finance, you're also not, as you're prohibited from interest, you're prohibited from investing in something that doesn't have a value or is not tangible. It's Islamic finance bonds could also be very much ESG compliant, because we have an underlying concept of do no harm, and you have to have ethical use cases by which you invest in. And the fact that we have I cannot quantify it, I cannot give you a figure on top of my head, but the Islamic finance market is very, very much a huge market that is underserved. Most of the Islamic finance transactions would happen in either Asia or London, but the actual liquidity comes from the Middle East. So I think that this could be a very interesting use case that would set Qatar apart from other jurisdictions. Um, Also, looking into the future, I think that we would be focusing on success stories of real world asset tokenization in terms of real estate, in terms of looking into, because we, another thing that is very interesting about Qatar is that we could hit the ground running with Web3 applications, because we don't really have to worry a lot about the legacy, and Qatar is very tech friendly. So I believe that blockchain could be a backbone to a lot of the applications in addition to other technologies. I think the crypto ban might slowly and gradually um, be taking different forms. Maybe it could happen like, I think it was Hong Kong that started with institutional and qualified investors, and then started looking into other use cases to selectively look into what cryptocurrencies could be also open to retail. Um, I don't know what else. Yeah, I think this is pretty much it.
Yeah, what you said about Islamic bonds was really interesting. And you said that this is unique and isn't looking that other Islamic countries looking into such a thing. You said it's completely unique.
I haven't seen other jurisdictions look. There are a lot of Islamic sukuk issuances, but I have not seen other jurisdictions that are looking for pure traditional Islamic sukuk on chain. There were some discussions around Islamic-based stablecoins, but sukuk issuances, I'm personally not aware of any.
And yeah, I guess you don't have any figures off the top of your head of the market for these kinds of issuances.
It was part of our digital asset lab presentation, but I don't recall it on the top of my head.
Okay, maybe I will look into that. That would be really interesting. Um, Great. Thank you so much, Maha, for looking, giving us a deep dive into Qatar and its, progress on regulating crypto and tokenization. I think that it's really, it's interesting to see the juxtaposition between banning retail trading of crypto to fiat, but then on the other hand, trying to strive for attracting big institutions into the country, especially in such a time where, you know, replacing gas and oil in the economy is slowly becoming more of a priority for oil-rich nations. Do you think that, maybe as a last question, that Qatar's wealth from gas and oil would be an attractive point for maybe institutions interested in tokenization setting up in the country? Would that give investors an advantage?
Not quite. So Qatar being oil and gas rich, being an attractive point for investors.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so, because Qatar is very much gas rich, and the gas that Qatar produces is one of the best in terms of low emission. So I think that is a very attractive part about being in Qatar. But Qatar, in addition to it being very gas and oil rich, I think that it provides an excellent infrastructure in terms of healthcare, in terms of telecommunication, access to education. Because, for example, when I decided to move from Germany to Qatar, I immediately found a German school, and the onboarding was very, very quick. And onboarding businesses is also very straightforward because you have two models. You have the state model, or you can come through one of our free zones, Qatar Financial Center being one of them, where you as a foreign entity will be basing your corporate registration on English common law. It has a very attractive tax regime that is based only on 10% of the revenue that will be generated in Qatar. And you have your own visa system to get people from abroad in case you want to attract talent. So I think, yes, oil and gas is an attractive factor, but also looking into the overall infrastructure that Qatar has developed over the past couple of years makes it also very attractive to institutions to come. And its geographical location could also be very interesting because some of the entities that we were speaking about, so they were saying that if we set shop in Qatar, we'll be able to meet Asia trading hours, US trading hours, and have a more or less interesting place to register our business and go through these different time zones. So yeah, I think Qatar will be more and more an interesting place to set up shop and attract both startups, but also very established institutions.
Well, I'll be looking forward towards the end of the year to see the regulatory framework go live, and as well as see if Qatar's investment strategy includes Bitcoin mining, or any other follow up on those rumors that have been circulating since the beginning of the year. And yeah, thank you so much. I think you're,
Thank you.
really helped to illuminate some of the mysteries around Qatar's regulatory approach to crypto, and also why trading has been banned to some degree. So thank you so much for your time, and
Thank
yeah, hope to
you.
speak soon.
Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to welcome you in Qatar very soon once we publish the this is the asset framework, and we can discuss that on the spot.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy
Thank you
your
so much.
day.